I did turn up my microphone to hopefully make it so it's a little bit louder for you.
Your voice is a little quiet tonight, so.
No, you're good.
Okay.
That is, it's good on my computer. I told JB, my computer seems to have a better volume.
No, I think it's because I turned up my microphone.
Oh, good. Well, leave it turned up because he'll have his next week.
Okay. All right. We've been studying the life of Samuel. Um, um, and we started out with kind of a background of where Samuel came from, the situation in Israel for when he was born, his birth, the sin of Eli and his sons, the whole story of Hannah and how she had other children and God blessed her because she had faith in God. She believed God. You know what? When we have faith in God, He blesses us. He likes it when we trust Him. He really does. Today we'll move into 1 Samuel chapter 4. This chapter describes the defeat of Israel by the Philistines and the capture of the Ark of the Covenant. Um, I think it's a really sad chapter in the Bible. It's really sad to see what happens when there's sin. It's hard to see God's people being defeated, but they're being defeated because they were sinning. They had abandoned God, and God punished them for it. We saw an example of their sin when we discussed Eli and his sons, but that was just the tip of the iceberg. The last verse in Judges 21:25 says, in those days there was no king in Israel, and everyone did what was right in his own eyes.
So whatever they wanted to do.
Yeah, tough situation. But there is hope because in this story, behind the scenes, God's working. He was preparing Samuel to lead Israel back to God, and that's what Samuel did in his lifetime.
But he was still a little boy.
But right now he was just a little boy. This was exactly how God worked in Israel through Ruth and Boaz. Israel had sunk to very low levels of depravity, yet God worked in the background to prepare the way for a king after his own heart, who was David. David is such a key. We're gonna one of these sessions, I'm going to talk about how David is such a key person in the Bible. David is important because the Messiah was going to be a son of David. And so God in the background is preparing a way for our salvation through the birth and death of Jesus Christ. It's all about Jesus Christ in the end anyway. It's what it's all about. And Jesus had to be born as a descendant of David. So all this stuff is going on in the background. But before we get to the leadership of Samuel and the anointing of David, there's a whole lot of ugliness that has to happen. And we're going to work through some of that. And tonight we're going to get started in that. And here comes Nancy. Hi, Nancy. Not quite on all the way. There you are.
Yeah, I didn't know it was on.
Well, we're glad you're on. I thought maybe you were driving. So,
I got here last night.
okay.
I
Okay.
went to church, and then Ezra and his family came over, and so
Okay. We're going to start now in 1 Samuel chapter 4, verses 1 through 3. Gary, could you read that?
Yes. And the word of Samuel came to all Israel. Now Israel went out to battle against the Philistines. They encamped at Ebenezer, and the Philistines camped at Aphnek. The Philistines drew up in line against Israel, and when the battle spread, Israel was defeated before the Philistines, who killed about 4,000 men on the field of battle. And when the people came to the camp, The elders of Israel said, "Why has the Lord defeated us today before the Philistines? Let us bring the ark of the covenant of the Lord here from Shiloh, that it may come among us and save us from the power of our enemies."
Good luck charm.
So yeah, verse 1 is important. And the word of Samuel came to all Israel. So Samuel's just a young person, but yet everybody knew that God had anointed him and designated him as a prophet. So in the background of all the stuff that we're going to read today, God's preparing Samuel to be the next judge. And he's preparing him, teaching him, speaking to him. And so the word of Samuel came to all Israel. That's important. So let's talk about the Philistines. Who were the Philistines? Anybody know who the Philistines were?
Well, they lived over on the
The
coast.
enemy.
Yeah, of Israel. Yeah.
So the Philistines were Hamites. They descended from Ham. It's in Genesis chapter 10. They were of the line of Ham, and they were related to the Egyptians. So Egypt was one of Ham's sons. And one of Egypt's sons, there's a line from Egypt right directly to the Philistines. Get that right. So the Philistines were not Canaanites. Canaan was another one of, he was actually Egypt's, Canaan was a son of one of Ham's sons, but he was not, Egypt was his uncle. I've got it wrong in my notes, but I'm remembering. So the Philistines were a thorn in Israel's side nearly throughout their time in the Promised Land. As God was guiding Moses to lead Israel out of Egypt, the shortest way to the Promised Land was through the land of the Philistines, and God said, "You're not going that way because you're not ready for battle with the Philistines." And so the Philistines were pretty much a thorn in their side all along. And it wasn't until David became the king that they were defeated and subjected. But he never was able to wipe them out, and they came back to harass Israel after David was gone over and over, and they weren't wiped out until Nebuchadnezzar. Nebuchadnezzar was the one who finally wiped out the Philistines. So, and in this instance, the Philistines again attacked Israel to gain dominance and gain territory, and they were successful. So much so that when Saul later became the king, very few Israelites had weapons. The Philistines banned Israel from having blacksmiths so that they couldn't create and sharpen weapons. If they wanted to sharpen their farm implements, they had to go to the Philistine blacksmiths to sharpen their farm implements. We'll get to that when we get to 1 Samuel chapter 13. But anyway, I just trying to give you a little bit of background. But in this first attack, the Philistines won and managed to kill 4,000 Israelites. And the Israelites couldn't understand how they lost. The problem was they still believed in God, sort of. They worshiped God, but not completely. Most of the people had become polytheistic. They worship God, but they also worship Baal and Ashtaroth. And this broke the first and most important commandment, which was to love and serve God alone.
No other gods before me.
God does not tolerate competition. And so the Israelites, they didn't call out for God for help. They just sent for the ark.
Like a good luck charm.
Like a good luck charm. Yeah. They expected God to come and help them fight, but they but they were realizing that God had defeated them, because it says, why has the Lord defeated us today before the Philistines? They realized that the reason they weren't successful is that God didn't help them.
So was Samuel deemed one of the elders of Israel that the people went to send for the ark? I mean,
No, at this time, Samuel's just a young lad.
he's still a kid. Okay.
He's
all
still a
right.
kid.
I think it
He
was
might
like-
have been a teenager or something like that, but he wasn't a judge yet.
well, because of what happens later, I'm thinking they went to Hophni and Phineas,
Yeah,
and they went, okay, we'll come.
yeah. Well, let's get to that.
Okay.
So let's read, Bob, go ahead and read verses 4 through 9.
Okay. So the people sent to Shiloh and brought from there the ark of the covenant of the Lord of hosts, who was enthroned on the cherubim. And the two sons of Eli, Hophni, and Phinehas, however you pronounce these, were there with the ark of the covenant of God. As soon as the ark of the covenant of the Lord came into the camp, all Israel gave a mighty shout, so the earth resounded. And when the Philistines heard the noise of the shouting, they said, "Why does this great shouting in the camp of the what does this great shouting in the camp of the Hebrews mean?" And when they learned that the ark of the Lord had come to camp, the Philistines were afraid, for they said, "A god has come into the camp." And they said, "Woe to us! For nothing like this has happened before. Woe to us! Who can deliver us from the power of the wilderness? Take courage and be men, O Philistines, lest you become slaves to the Hebrews, as they have been to you. Be men and fight."
Yeah, okay.
Well,
So after their defeat, the leadership decided to send for the ark. They rightly equated the ark with God's presence, but they were looking at the ark as if it was just another idol. Did God ever tell Moses to use the ark as a means of defeating the enemies?
Never.
The only time God told them to march with the ark was when they were to march around Jericho. That's the only time that happened. God did not. God didn't tell them in this passage to go get the ark. They decided that on their own. And I think the people of Israel had gotten so used to idolatry, they equated the ark with an idol that represented God.
Obviously,
This doesn't surprise me. Who was teaching them the laws of God?
nobody.
Who should have been? Eli, Hophni,
Eli.
and Phineas. Eli wasn't doing it, and his sons didn't even believe in God. It was a bad, sad time, a really sad time. And obviously, the Israelites were convinced the ark would bring them victory. They shouted so loud, it says the earth resounded. When you have several thousand people and they all shout together, it's going to be loud. Truly, this was the right reaction of God's entrance into the camp, but did God really come into the camp?
Not like they thought.
No. The ark did represent God's presence, but the ark wasn't God.
And certainly not God do us whatever we want on demand.
Yes. So as I was putting this together, I thought about what would we do if Jesus suddenly entered our room where we are?
Praise God.
I would follow my face before him, because in the present time now, I'm a sinner and I'd be convicted. His holiness would convict me.
Yeah.
Right.
But when we get to heaven and the sin is gone from us,
Praise
then
God.
we will shout for joy when Jesus comes to us. because there's nothing to separate us from him. Our sin will be gone.
I like the pictures of, there's a painting someone did of a young woman running into the arms of Jesus.
I like that painting,
Yeah, that's what I want to do. Daddy.
Mm.
Hmm.
So, okay, so the shouting got the Philistines' attention. God had a tremendous reputation. He did. It lasted for over 400 years. He'd done some amazing things for Israel, which didn't go unnoticed by the people of Canaan. Many of these things happened nearly 400 years before this. But the Philistines still remembered. The people of Canaan still remembered. What were some of those things? He sent 9 rather severe plagues on Egypt, which almost ruined it.
Well,
He,
crossing the Red Sea.
he parted the Red Sea. He helped Israel to defeat the Canaanites on the east side of the Jordan. He parted the Jordan so Israel could cross it on dry land. Everybody heard about all these things. He helped Israel to defeat Jericho by marching around it. People heard about it.
Right, and with the Red Sea, he destroyed the entire Egyptian army too. So
That's right. He destroyed, and nobody else could destroy it. The Egyptians were the power at the time in that area of the land. They were the dominant military power, and God destroyed them.
That was not just there, but all the way up the entire Middle East.
Yeah.
Mhm.
They were remembering it. We remember what God did for you.
Mhm.
And they would, Rahab, we know what you did. We know what happened.
Yeah.
And King and Og and whoever, we know what happened. I mean, they all knew.
So they were rightly afraid of God, but they didn't give up the fight. So, Barbara, could you read verses 10 and 11?
So the Philistines fought, and Israel was defeated, and they fled, every man to his home. And there was a very great slaughter, for 30,000 foot soldiers of Israel fell. And the ark of God was captured, and the 2 sons of Eli, Hophni and Phinehas, died.
Mm-hmm.
Israel was confident with the ark on their side, but it didn't help them. God allowed them to be defeated because they were in sin. They were in sin. They sent for the ark instead of really trusting in God. And it was a great defeat. 30,000 Israelites were killed in that one day. Can you imagine what our country would do if we lost 30,000 soldiers in one day? We couldn't tolerate losing 4,000 service members over several years in Afghanistan.
Which is bad enough.
Which is bad enough. But 30,000 is a lot in one day. And the Philistines captured the ark and killed Eli's sons. So, Nancy, could you read verses 12 through 18, please?
A man of Benjamin ran from the battle line and came to Shiloh the same day with his clothes torn and with dirt on his head. When he arrived, Eli was sitting on his seat by the road watching, for his heart trembled for the ark of God.
The ark.
And when the man came into the city and told the news, all the city cried out. When Eli heard the sound of the outcry, he said, "What's this uproar?" Then the man hurried and came and told Eli. Now Eli was 98 years old, and his eyes were set so that he could not see. And the man said to Eli, "I am he who come from the battle. I fled from the battle today," he said. "How did it go, my son?" He who brought the news answered and said, "Israel has fled before the Philistines. There has also been a great defeat among the people. Your 2 sons also, Hophni and Phinehas, are dead, and the ark of God has been captured." As soon as he mentioned the ark of God, Eli fell over backward from his seat by the side of the gate, and his neck was broken, and he died. For the man was old and heavy. He had judged Israel 40 years.
Wow. Wow. What a story. What a story.
A mess.
So here's Eli sitting by the road because he was concerned. Was he concerned for his sons? No, he was concerned for the ark. I believe, Eli had done some pretty bad things, but I believe he truly loved God, and he valued the ark as he should have. He was a high priest. Actually, he shouldn't have allowed them to take the ark from the tabernacle.
Which makes me think it was Hophni and Phinehas.
It was Hophni and Phinehas. They had to carry it.
Yeah.
They had to carry it. So Eli was very old. He was 98 years old. He couldn't see. Most likely he had cataracts. Everybody, well, if you live long enough, you're going to get cataracts. Remember the story of Isaac when he was 100 years old? He couldn't see, and that gave Jacob the ability to fool him because he couldn't see because he had cataracts. And he lived to be 180 years old. He lived 80 more years with cataracts. But in our day, we're able to get rid of those things. Have bionic eyes, right, Bob?
We still need readers.
Yeah.
In another 1,000 years, maybe we won't even need these. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe. So was Eli's reaction over the death of his sons?
No.
No,
No.
Doesn't say that.
He fell over when he heard the ark had been taken. He knew his sons were going to die. That had been prophesied to him by the unnamed prophet and by Samuel.
Yeah, double whammy.
He didn't know the ark was going to be taken. He knew his sons were going to be died. He was shocked because the ark had been taken. And so shocked he fell over and broke his neck and died. And it says that he was old and heavy. Why was he heavy? Because he was eating a lot of meat. Eating a lot of meat.
Yeah, he was eating the barbecue.
That his sons were given to him. So we got one more verses. Gary, could you read verses 19 to 22?
19 through 22. Now his daughter-in-law, the wife of Phinehas, was pregnant, about to give birth. And when she heard the news that the ark of God was captured, and that her father-in-law and her husband were dead, she bowed and gave birth, for her pains came upon her. And about the time of her death, the women attending her said to her, "Do not be afraid, for you have borne a son." But she did not answer or pay attention, and she named the child Ichabod, saying, "The glory has departed from Israel," because the ark of God had been captured, and because her father-in-law and her husband, and because of her father-in-law and her husband. And she said, "The glory has departed from Israel, for the ark of God has been captured."
A big deal.
It was a big deal. Everybody knew it was a big deal that the ark of God had been captured. Eli was not the only one impacted by the loss of the ark. Phinehas's wife went into labor and she died, giving in childbirth. And she was very upset for the loss of the ark. She even named her son Ichabod, which means the glory is departed. What a horrible name to have for the rest of your life. Truly, this is a serious situation for Israel. They thought the ark going to the battlefield would just be a magic charm that would give them the ability to defeat the Philistines. But no, it didn't work that way because they they had abandoned God because God doesn't tolerate competition.
Certainly not idolatry.
And God had abandoned them because of their sin. Exactly what God had told Moses would happen back in Deuteronomy when he was telling where Moses was writing down what God had told him about if there's a few verses about if you follow God, this is what he's going to do, and it's all beautiful and things. And then he says, if you don't follow me, and there's like 50 verses that follow that, explaining all the bad things that are going to happen to them if they don't follow him. And this is exactly one of those kind of things that was going to happen. But Israel didn't need to worry about the ark. God wasn't going to allow it to be damaged or misused. That's what we get to study next week. And that is
It's actually pretty funny.
a pretty funny story, actually. What happens to the Philistines? I won't give it away. Read it, and enjoy it. It's a good story. Uh, God will not be mocked. And he proves it with the Philistines. Actually, he had their attention. He gets their attention.
Yeah, they were terrified.
They were terrified. But sin has consequences. Even when we confess our sin and God forgives us, sin leaves scars.
Yeah.
And we need to run from it with all our might. We need to be afraid of sin and hate it. We need to have the right attitude towards sin. The problem that I have, though, is I think when I think I'm starting to get a hold of my sin, God points out something new that I'm doing that I've been doing all along. I didn't realize it was wrong. And so, but that's part of sanctification and getting to be more like him. But that's fine. I want him to do that. I want to be more like him. I hope we all do. So, comments or questions?